You're watching the Urban Debate in Mirror. I'm Faye D'Souza. Thank you for joining us. This is a very important conversation we must have now. While you would know that Lok Sabha has not functioned for the last several days because of the disruption, there have been questions and answers that have been moving on paper. And not just answers, there was something very interesting that came up. We had one MP, Mr. Dishish Chala, who asked the government if the government has taken note of a report by the International Labour Organization noting that joblessness in India will increase from 8.6 million this year to 8.9 million next year. He also asked if there are details of any targets that the government have set for creating jobs and the achievements in that area. He also went on to ask the reason for decline in employment growth in India and the steps that have been taken by the government. In response to these questions, the Labour Minister of India has in fact responded on paper to say that the government of India has no target for job creation, but employment generation is a priority concern for the government, end quote. No target. So here's the question we have to ask tonight, viewers. Is joblessness a prime concern? As the minister has said, a priority concern for the government. And if it is, why doesn't the government have a target? And if the government doesn't have the target, how do you measure your success, if at all? More importantly, we know the Niti Aayog themselves have pointed out that we do not have data in this country that adequately allows for the study of employment because the government is not collating adequate data on employment or on unemployment. Jobs or the lack of jobs are a serious present concern in our country. And to turn around and hear that the government has no target as far as job creation is concerned is very worrying. That's the question I'm asking this evening. Why doesn't the government have a target with job creation? If you don't have a target, how is this your prime concern? Joining me on the show, Rituparna Chakrabarti, President of the Indian Staffing Federation and co-founder of Team Lease. We also have Santosh Mehrotra, Professor of Economics at the Center for the Informal Sector Labour Studies, JNU. He's an economist. Mohammed Khan of the Congress joins us as well. Vaibhav Agarwal, spokesperson for the BJP. Suro Kamal Datta, an economist. And Javed Jaffer is the State Treasurer of Student India. I welcome all of you to this conversation. I'm going to start with Santosh Mehrotra. Professor Mehrotra, is it worrying that the government doesn't have a target when it comes to job creation? And does this suggest prime concern?
Yes, of course, it's a worry that there is no target. But, you know, please understand that governments having a target would simply signify that it is a priority because government doesn't create the jobs. Government policies do help or hinder. Most of the jobs in our country are in the private sector, and it is the private sector that creates the jobs. So really the issue is whether policies are such as to be conducive to job creation, and all the evidence suggests that as of now, jobs are not getting created. So clearly a lot remains to be done, and that's the bottom line. I mean, we can come back to this subject.
Yes, Javed Jaffer, State Treasurer, Student India. As a student right now, what is your view on the matter of job creation? Like Professor Mehrotra pointed out, the government doesn't create jobs. The government creates policy that creates jobs. Do you believe there are enough jobs being created?
Not exactly. No enough jobs have been created. You all know that jobs are the basic. Employment is the basic for the development of the people of the country. Standard of life, increasing standard of life, everything is dependent on job creation. So creating jobs is the major point to be discussed at this point of time.
Well, if Vaibhav Agarwal can hear me right now, Vaibhav Agarwal, I want to bring you in on this. We understand now officially on paper from the Minister of Labour that the government doesn't have a target when it comes to employment or creating jobs. Now, this would go against the promises made by the BJP before the 2014 election, where there was a very, very clear promise made that 1 crore jobs would be created per year. How do we know if 1 crore jobs are being created per year if you haven't even if you haven't even set a target? And more than 4 years of the term is over. What's the response to that, Mr. Agarwal?
Right. Good evening. So, this is brilliant, and I would not fall short of accepting some hits and some misses. So, and I'm being very straightforward, and I try to be as honest as I can. I don't want to politicize. This is not a political issue. This is absolutely an issue which talks of nation building. Now let's take a look at. We can debate on the numbers, but I would like to personally look at what is it that we are trying to do to create jobs. You know, a recent survey that was carried out also said that, and I quote, that youth between 15 and 30 years in different sectors, and these are sectors across 8 categories broadly to be classified in manufacturing, health, education, and so on and so forth, in the country are either unemployed or not taking training, which is more than 30% of the youth of our sample size, which is about 2 lakhs. So from different industries and so on and so forth. So, you know, there are 2 parts to it here. They are either not taking training, either the training awareness, availability is not there, or they're just not interested to take training because perhaps they're too used to not having anything like Skill India program around them, which is concentrating on training them. So this is the first time that in the independent history that the government is having a focused expenditure on education, for example. If we have good education, obviously we will have a series of employment opportunities that get created, and it's a whole supply chain, it's a whole cycle. You know, I don't want to go into numbers wherein I'd land up comparing X and Y.
No, but Vaibhav Agarwal, you said you're quoting a research survey. Can you tell me what survey it is? What is the title of the survey that you're quoting, please?
No, I would not quote the source of the survey, but I do have a survey. Apologies that I'm not quoting it, but I'm not faffing. I do have a survey here, but I'm not faffing. I have the numbers in place. But I don't want to bring in the source right now because it's
so I'm sure you do, but it becomes difficult for me to verify what you're saying on my show if I can't look at, and I have surveys on my table. So if you could tell me which one you're referring to, I would also take a look at those numbers.
Right. I'm only... Absolutely. Valid point taken, but I'm only referring to a negative aspect of the entire job creation on our side, and allow me, and don't let me quote a survey per se. Let me say this, that as per recent information that we've gathered, 30% of the youth between 15 to 30 are unemployed or not taking training. You know, this is more from a macro level which I'm referring to. And some of this information is in the public domain, and I'm sure you would have your hands onto it. I don't doubt your thing. So what I'm talking about is the intention of the government here. The intention of the government is to put this on track. Now, how do we put this on track? We want to have a focused development on the education expenditure and the delivery therein. We want to have a skill development program enhanced to the next level, and because we're classifying into 8 categories, there is so much data that is flowing in right now from different of these 8 categories which fall into manufacturing,
I just have one counter question for you,
transport, accommodation and restaurant, IT, BPO and so on. Yes.
Is it not true that under the PMEGP, this year, we've created only half the number of jobs we created last year. Last year's numbers, 2016-17, was about 4 lakh 0.07. This year, it's 2 lakh 0.31. So under the Prime Minister's scheme as well, we've only created half as many jobs as we should have created. And this is the Prime Minister's Employment Generation Program run by the Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises. What's your response to that?
Okay, I'm yet to, I don't want to counter the numbers and make this debate a little more complicated, but to stick to the governance agenda and to answer your question on a macro level, your numbers absolutely may be correct, may just be correct, I would say, but not going into the
I'm reading out of the Parliament submission by the Minister of Labour, so his numbers absolutely may be correct.
Right. Right, right. So as I said humbly, and I said, and this is no rocket science. We all know there is an the eminent panelists will all agree to what I'm saying. There have been some hits and some misses, and we're not running away from it. We're not shirking away and taking the responsibility. Yes, we've made some poll promises. We've made some development to those promises. Some development, and I'm quoting very humbly. I'm quoting it very straightforwardly because the numbers speak for itself. But there are other external reasons to it also. So for example, if there was a slowdown in the overall numbers, we expected that, okay, we are getting, so initially at the poll, the promises were all based on projections. But as the years come by, you start playing on reality numbers, which real numbers, which start flowing in then. So, you know, from last year to this year, perhaps there is an economic slowdown. Demonetization definitely had its effect, largely on the manufacturing sector, which covered 30 or 35% of the overall job creations. You know, and then you know, so there is a ripple effect. As I said, there is a whole supply chain.
So what you've effectively told us, Vaibhav Agarwal, is that poll promises are poll promises, but it's only after governments come into play that it actually becomes linked to reality. Fair enough, I'll take that poll promises shouldn't actually be taken literally. Let me give Santosh Mehrotra an opportunity to rebut, and then I'll bring in the rest of my panelists. Mr. Mehrotra, go ahead, please.
Well, I thought the previous panelist was rather honest in recognizing the following facts. So let me put some numbers on what I think he was referring to. The main reason why jobs are not getting created is because the investment rate has come down very sharply in the last 5 or 6 years. The peak of investment to GDP ratio was in the year 2008 when it was 38% of GDP. It currently stands at 29%. It has consistently declined over the last 5 years. When investment happens, that's when new jobs get created. It's not that new jobs are not getting created, it's just that they are not getting created at a rate at which young people are joining the labor force, point one. And at a rate at which people want to leave agriculture. May I finish? I didn't interrupt you, sir. Secondly, we do know that credit offtake has been extremely low. We know that capacity utilization in industry is at 70%, which is one of the lowest we've had in a very long time. Third, we know that plant load factor in electricity plants, which run manufacturing and services and agriculture, that's at 60%, one of the lowest in about 30 years. So in all of this, it is, you have the explanation, the reasons why fewer jobs are getting created. So the labor minister was quite honest in recognizing that there are millions who are waiting for jobs, and there are millions who have gotten educated, because we've had some real success in terms of ensuring secondary enrollments rise between the year 2010 and 2015-16. So secondary enrollment, which means for 15 to 16-year-olds who earlier might have joined the labor force, they were in education for these many years, but they now want to enter the labor force. But they can't because there are no jobs. Their jobs are not growing. I mean, the most shocking bit,
all right,
and
let
I'll
me
close with this, Faye. The last point, Faye, just the last point. Just last point, Faye. This is a very important point, because with these young people who are getting educated, I did some number crunching on the Labor Bureau data, the very data that came out from the Ministry of Labor, the annual survey and not the quarterly survey, please note, for 15-16, and I compared it to what was happening between 2011-12 and 15-16, and you find the following shocking figure, that 15 to 29-year-olds, who are all getting educated, are saying we are in agriculture. People want to leave agriculture, and they are saying we are in agriculture. Well, clearly no one wants to be in agriculture. They are in agriculture. An additional 24 million got added to agriculture, young people, because there are no non-agricultural jobs. These are educated people who don't want to be in agriculture.
Right. And so we have two problems here. One, of course, is our agricultural sector that's not moving fast enough, that's not, that has not changed, it's having a very, very bad time. And on the other hand, no jobs being created.
Right.
But a couple of people with voices that support the government. Survo Kamal Datta, economist. Mr. Datta, where do you stand on the jobs at this point? And I just want to review, and I just want to go over this for the benefit of our viewers. There was a question asked in Parliament as to what the targets are for the government on job creation and what the achievements are so far. The Ministry of Labour and Employment has responded saying the government has not set a target at all. And employment generation is a priority concern, and one fails to understand how it can be a priority concern if you haven't even set a target. Mr. Datta.
Good evening, Faye. I'm meeting you after a long time in your show. In relation to target areas, I would say that, it is better not to have a target instead of having a target and then you don't fulfill the target. Several governments in the past had given a target in relation to agriculture, in relation to industrial growth rate, in relation to employment, and they could not fulfill that. So why doing some kind of false promises if you are not able to fulfill those promises? I remember during the time of the vote on account, the former finance minister of our country, of the UPA government, was very honest enough when he said that the target which we had in relation to employment, we could not fulfill that target which was there in the UPA, election agenda. Same logic lies for the NDA government also. I think the NDA government, when they came to power, and prior to power in 2014, they had also come with a lot of hullabaloo in relation employment generation and the target, and they could not fulfill that. So let us be honest about certain things which we need to look into, and we have to a serious kind of a debate on all these national issues. And I would expect both the parties to have a kind of a consensus on this issue. I do agree with the professor from JNU that yes, if you don't have investment inflow into the country, especially in relation to the private sector, and if there is no capital formation in the private sector, you cannot have in job creation, because India, remember one thing, the policies of the government is just a kind of an accelerator.
Right. Mr. Datta, yes, I understand what you're saying, and I'm going to take this question to Rituparna Chakrabarti, who is the president of a company. I don't know how the government would work differently, but in the private sector, Mr. Datta, you can't get anything done without first setting a target. What is the date of delivery? What is your ETA? What is your target? That's how projects are built. So
can I finish before you take in your second speaker? Now, what I was trying to say is it's always advisable to have a long-drawn agenda in relation to employment generation, because we need to understand here in India, we have three types of unemployment. One is the educated unemployment, the other one is the rural or the uneducated or semi-literate unemployment, and the third is the disguised or the seasonal unemployment. Therefore, we need to have in a kind of a proper mechanism to handle all these three areas of employment as such. Second is yes, in relation to the public sector also, those industries which are in government control, if they are not generating enough resources for employment generation, government has to have in a long drawn kind of a process as to how to generate employment there.
Okay.
So that is one important
Right. So let me take that question to Rituparna Chakrabarti, and I understand, Mr. Datta, you're saying that the government needs to have a three-tier plan. How do you have a plan without setting a target internally? And this was an internal question asked in Parliament of the government. Rituparna Chakrabarti, how do you solve any problem, do any project, take up any job without setting a target?
Thanks, Faye. I think first and foremost, at the cost of sounding repetitive, I will share this, that I don't think India has a job problem. India has a wage problem. Essentially, everybody who wants a job has a job. They basically don't have the wages that they aspire for. So that is the crux of the issue which we need to focus on. Now on the point of data. I think this particular subject has taken has become so politically rhetorical that for every data point which suggests that there are jobs that have been created, you will see immediately emergence of other data points which will show that jobs have not been created. And hence, I think that's, at this point of time, there is really dearth of accurate information in terms of what's going on in terms of the jobs. Now, in terms of setting target, I'll tell you the problem with setting targets, and for somebody like the government, is moment a number is given out there, then you will see a short-term tendency of trying to put together again a set of data points to kind of support that. And I honestly think from a long-term perspective, it doesn't do the nation or the country any good. And hence, I think government should focus and continue to focus on long-term aspect which will trigger the job creation process. Now, yes, it's a fact that, I mean, India is a unique case in front of the world, where almost anywhere between, again, it's a debatable figure, anywhere between 10 to 12 million kids are joining the workforce at a conservative estimate every year. And hence, we are saying that we need to create that many jobs at least to say that we have created enough jobs. Having said that, let me take a practitioner's perspective. I represent an organization who is in the field of employment and is an aggregator of jobs. My biggest problem right now is that I have jobs. I may not have as many jobs to solve India's employment problem, but I'm talking of a considerable volume of jobs which I'm unable to fulfill. And that brings me to the question that it's not that I do not have enough footfalls. It's just that I don't see the concerted effort in terms of having the right skills or creating awareness around the jobs that do exist. Because we are clouded with the rhetoric that there are no jobs, there are no jobs. We are not focusing on the jobs that exist, but they're remaining vacant because of lack of skills. So, I mean, there is a report which we recently which talks about India's job market salvation called sales, with nothing changing, with things remaining just as is. We are saying in the next 3 years, just in the area of sales across industries, 2.5 million jobs will get created. But my bigger worry is that do we have the skills or the wherewithals or the awareness getting created to take advantage of these jobs? Will this solve the current...
Let me bring in Mohammed Khan of the Congress, who joins us now as well.
Jobs finally, which can change future of certain youth.
Right.
Hi, Faye.
Let me bring in Mohammed Khan, and then I'll open this up to rebuts to the entire panel, rebuttals. Mohammed Khan, first your opening statement on the targets, and here's what Mr. Datta and Rituparna are telling us. Maybe it's not, maybe we don't need to set a target. That way we won't disappoint everybody. Don't get the hopes up. Mohammed Khan, go ahead.
Well, as this government has proven, we don't necessarily need to set targets to disappoint the people. My opening statement is this. I don't know what more I can say that hasn't been beautifully summed up by Santosh Mehrotra Saab already. Perhaps I would add that, as he pointed out, the investment to GDP ratio has fallen significantly. So has the private investment ratio. In 2008, it was 58 rupees invested by the private sector for every 100 rupees invested by the government. Currently, it is 10 rupees by the private sector for every 100 rupees invested by the government. I would perhaps also quote Ruchir Sharma at a conclave day before yesterday of Morgan Stanley, where he said that $23,000 millionaires have left India. That is the lack of sentiment in this government's favor. I would then perhaps go on to talk about the fact that the very first time our Prime Minister acknowledged that there was a job crisis was in January this year, when for the first time when he summoned and constituted that Economic Advisory Council headed by Surjit Bhalla, he said jobs are an issue. Prior to that, colleagues of Gaurav Bhai would come on channels and say, Mudra is creating jobs, to which we would reply, if Mudra is indeed creating the kind of jobs it is, then wouldn't they be captured in the GDP figures? I would perhaps also remind Gaurav Bhai about the fact that when the RBI came out with the report last year saying that jobs are at a 12-year low, you moved to discredit the RBI. You said that this is hullabaloo and this is rumor mongering. Again, the question of targets is simple. You give people after 4 years, extraordinary promises beget extraordinary expectations. After 4 years, people are asking you, where are the jobs? I'll end with this example because it's very recent. Today morning at 6 a.m., several thousand students and protesters blocked the traffic between Chhatrapati Shivaji Terminus and Matunga. They laid down on the railway tracks, protesting against the shortfall of jobs in railway, recruitment. Several of them were arrested, booked under various sections which didn't apply, like murder. And Piyush Goyal had to call a press conference to address the issue. I'm sorry, I don't think it was today. I think it happened yesterday. But this is the kind of desperation that is there.
It was this morning.
Okay. I'm sorry. I must have got. But that shows you the kind of desperation there is. People are willing to lie down on railway tracks, resort to these desperate measures just to get this government's attention. What Mehrotra Saab said on agriculture and disguised unemployment is absolutely true. The period of agrarian distress we are witnessing can be denied by absolutely no economist worth his salt. I simply say this. Gaurav Bhai is the first BJP spokesperson to acknowledge that demonetization did more harm than good, and I'm very glad. But I would simply say, now you have less than 8 months left. Please do something worthy of what the people elected you for.
All right, Vaibhav Agarwal, I'll come back to you. I have a couple of people on the phone line, but running on your screen right now is visuals of what happened in Mumbai this morning, where they were in fact young people who did a rail roko. Now, whether that was politically motivated or not, we don't know, but there were people who stopped the central rail from functioning. And as a result, as we know in Mumbai, when the trains don't function, sweet hell breaks loose in the city. And it did, and a lot of people did not reach their jobs or did not reach their offices on time. Manigandan is on the phone line from Chennai. Mr. Manigandan, go ahead, we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you, D'Souza. Good evening, everyone. I just want to share my concern. It is not based on some political party, whether it is going to be BJP or Congress. So, as an unemployed person, right, I just want to share my opinions. First of all, in India, right, if you see the engineering graduate who is completed it's B, right? They are just earning less than 8,000 or 10,000 to 8,000. But in initial years, 10 years back, right, they have been earning more than 20,000. But if you compare with the price, right, it has been for example, petrol, everything was very less. But after 10 years, right, it's been increased more than 2 to 3 times. But the salary, right, it has been decreased for 2 to 3 times. So just as a normal person, right, we are not able to survive with that. Also in the call, right, one of the person, I'm not sure about her name, she said in India everyone is having a job. So what kind of job? Is a B person doing a security job? That is what a national is going to do for us. So that is what India is all about. No, right, we have pride for our nation. So we need a job which for what we learned. So see, the person
yes, for what you're trained for. All right, all right. Yes, Mr. Krishnamurthy on the phone line from Hyderabad. Mr. Krishnamurthy, go ahead. All right, we seem to have lost that phone call. We'll go back. Our phone lines are open to our other viewers. Rebuttals now. Vaibhav Agarwal, you first. Respond to what Mohammad Khan said about the protest that happened in Mumbai today and to our other panelists.
Okay, so I don't have a rebuttal on the protest that happened in Mumbai. It's great that it's for the first time freedom of speech is seen. Democracy rules, and we don't stop anyone from protesting as long as it's peaceful. Yes, they all have their reasons. It's a big country, and we need to just be mature enough and aware of things that are happening around us. Now, having said that, since Mohammed Bhai brought up numbers, so I must share the numbers because I was not trying to get into the number debate. But then, I want to understand UPA 1 and UPA 2. I'm not going too far back, Mohammed Bhai, and this is directly addressed to you. Yeah. UPA 1, when we took a 5-year survey, and these are government numbers I'm quoting, 2.7% is what the employment rate fell by, and in UPA 2 it fell by 3.4%. However, by multi-agency survey across the globe, it is projected to be 7.2% growth in 17-18. So I don't want to go in numbers. That is the reason why I didn't want to go in numbers. But any which ways. So here we are as a government, a matured government, trying to create not trying to stand on rhetoric, but trying to create an environment, as Rituparna talk about numbers, but you started it. So in 2013-14, total number of colleges in the country under the UPA2 was 36,600 and something, and it is already 40,000 in NDA. So we've just added it. And
let me get Javed.
Total number of schools. This is
yes,
called
a
tiered approach. One moment. This is called a tiered approach. I'm giving a rebuttal to Rituparna as well as the professor on the panel as well, and of course my dear Mohammed Bhai. Now this is called a strategically placed tiered approach, and when you look at the data on this tiered approach, Rituparna rightly pointed out that when you look at one data which is positive, the other one starts pulling you down. Why? Because that in data in technical terms is called stratification of data, and you cannot look at it quarter to quarter, year to year. You'll have to look at it from a term to a term.
Okay, fair enough. Now, Santosh Mehrotra wants to rebut. Santosh Mehrotra, go ahead.
Stratification of data. You cannot look at it quarter, year to year. You have to look at it.
Can I come in here, Faye?
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's what I'm hearing. First of all, education expenditure under the NDA government as a proportion of GDP has not increased. We are talking about in real terms as a proportion of GDP. Point one, it has remained under 4%. It was under 4% under UPA, it is under 4% under NDA. But this is besides the point. The really important issue here is that we do have enough data, to demonstrate unmistakably, and the Minister of Labour has said so in Parliament himself, that not enough jobs are getting created. The Labour Bureau's annual survey the Labour Bureau did an annual survey every year, and all that is available on the net. It is unfortunate that the Labour Bureau did not put out the data for 16-17. Why they did not, I don't know, but I can tell you that I've done very detailed unit level, household level analysis of the 15-16 data for Labour Bureau, and it shows unmistakably that between 11-12 and 15-16, fewer jobs were getting created than young people were joining the labor force. And if you are going to compare the number of jobs that were being created earlier between 2004-5 and 11-12, well, only 2 million young people were joining the labor force, but 7.5 million new non-agricultural jobs were being created over that entire period, as a result of which the labor market tightened, and wages, which is what Rituparna was rightly talking about, real wages rose. And because real wages rose, poverty declined. Poverty declined in absolute terms. In other words, the number of poor people in the country fell for the first time in the history of post-independence India in absolute terms. So between 2004-5 and 11-12, 140 million people came out of poverty. But the fact of the matter is that the number of jobs in non-agriculture have not been growing. I've already demonstrated to you on the basis of Labour Bureau data that the number of young people in agriculture has grown by 24 million.
Right.
Earlier, between 4-5 and 11-12, the number of people in agriculture was dropping
this conversation.
by 5 million per annum. That number has stopped dropping. Why? So we have the numbers.
Let me refocus this conversation, and I just want to remind our viewers what we're talking about, Professor Mehrotra. The government has told us in Parliament that it has not set a target for job creation. Now, I also want to remind our viewers that this is the same government that promised us no less than 1 crore jobs before the election. So it's simply a question of, and if we are now turning around and saying, no, setting a target is, is bad precedent, then why make the promise at all? You made a promise publicly, but internally, when actually working on the project of creating jobs, you've not created a target, and that's my problem. Javed Jaffer is, is a student who was a student who's currently unemployed. And I want to understand from you, you've heard all of the arguments, Javed, so far from everyone. What is your response? Is it a problem of skills? We heard one of our panelists say it's because people don't want to be skilled. Vaibhav Agarwal said people don't want to be skilled or they don't know about the skills. Is that the truth? Or is it that you have the jobs available, like Rituparna said, but you don't want them because you think this is not the wage or this is not the salary that you want? What is the problem according to you?
Yes, ma'am. We do have the problem of skill.
By the way, that's simply wrong.
Skill level is a requirement.
People want to be skilled. It's the quality of the skills that are very bad.
People want. We do have the problem of skills, and people wanted to be skilled. I am telling that people wanted to be skilled, and skill training is a requirement. At the same time, now that we all have gone through the statistics, we have been discussing about the statistics happening. Now we need a solution. We need what practical solution can be done at present time. How can the job problem can be solved? We have to discuss on that than discussing a few political agendas. We need a solution. The government must bring in solutions so that people, the unemployed people gets jobs. The learned unemployed are higher in our country comparatively. So we need a solution for the problem rather than discussing on propagandas.
Surva Kamal Datta, go ahead.
That's an excellent point. May I come in?
Can I add in certain things here, Faye? First and foremost, the major...
Yes, Surva Kamal Datta, go ahead, please.
The major challenge with this government was like it was two-pronged. First was to fulfill in the backlog, which was passed on by the previous government in relation to employment generation. That was one major thing. The second thing is how to generate added new jobs in relation to the backlog also and creating more jobs. That was a much more wider problem as such. We need to understand as to why this has happened, you know. This has happened because of last 15-20 years of crisis. Mr. Mehrotra, when you were speaking, I did not disrupt you, so please be docile enough to listen for some time. The problem with this country is like the major crisis which had taken place in relation to the rural economy, in relation to the agricultural sector for the last 20 years, is a major reason as to why India has become
I'm sorry, I didn't say a word. I'm sorry, I didn't say a word. I did not say a word.
I thought you were murmuring something.
You are hearing things.
So, no, it was quite obvious that you were trying to revert in between. So
all right, gentlemen, stay on point. Stay on point, please. Stay on point.
The agricultural crisis and the rural economic crisis in our country is a major reason as to why this has happened. Second thing is like I don't buy that argument that if more allocation of financial resources has been kept aside for education, that should not be counted. Why will you not count that? You need to count that also. It could not be, it's not necessary as to whether we look into the, the percentage of allocation of resources in relation to different sectors in terms of GDP. We also need to look into the actual allocation of resources in relation to finances for different sectors.
Why we don't have a target? Mr. Datta, with all due respect, why are we allocating money to a cause that doesn't have a target?
Faye, let me come to the target area.
We don't have a target. No, Mr. Datta, I refuse. See, I don't understand this. Please explain to me how you can do any project or you can do any job without having a target. Set 3 targets. This is the worst possible target. This is the second one. This is the third one. How do you plan a project without having a target? How does the Labour Ministry go about its job without having an annual target or a term-wise target? I don't understand. What is this justification? You are telling me, Vaibhav Agarwal is telling us we're throwing money at the problem, allocating this much, but you don't have a target.
I'm coming to that only. I'm coming to a reply to your question.
Any consistent plan requires targets.
Now, in relation to target as such, I want to ask you one thing. You know, like, I mean, if you look into the election manifesto of both the parties, NDA as well as Congress, UPA had promised
Yes.
around 5 crore jobs in their manifesto. But when Chidambaram ji was, setting aside the vote on account in 2013-2014, he had acknowledged that the UPA government could not create even 5 lakh jobs in the country. So my question out here is like,
absolutely,
why do we
absolutely, and which is why that government was thrown out, and a government that promised 1 crore jobs was brought in. Listen. This is not about politics. This is not about politics. No, calm down, Mr. Datta, calm down. Mr. Datta, take a breath. Calm down.
Instead of political bickering, we need to come into a holistic.
What is a holistic solution? Ayurveda.
We need to look into the areas as to where things have gone wrong, and we have to accelerate the growth process there.
And when are we going to do it?
When
are we going to do it? It has been 4 years already. When are we going to do it?
If you are talking about investment in relation to GDP growth rate, investment was falling from 2009 onwards in this country. We need to understand as to why this has happened.
Exactly. So when are we going to see? You know what? I 1 second. To my panelists. 1 second, Mr. Datta, take a breath. Calm down. I don't give, honestly, forgive me for swearing, I don't give a damn about the governments. This government, that government, this government, that government, how many more years are we going to lose? So we're sitting around saying this was always bad. From 2009 we've been losing investment, from 2008 we've been losing jobs, from 2004 we've been, someone needs to change the problem, right? You have to find the solution.
To the backlog of unemployment in this country, 17 crore people were unemployed when the UPA abdicated power. Will you not give a damn to that? Or will you just erase that out?
So have those people found employment now? Have those people found employment now, Mr. Datta?
They haven't.
So that's my problem. That's my problem. So it's not about this party or that party. It's the point, and these are not statistics. This is not politics. Every one of those people is a human being with a family to support. These are people we're talking about. They have families, they have bills to pay, they have children to send to school, they have food to put on the table. We're completely losing the point here if we argue this party, that party.
No,
why can't we see these people as human beings?
We need to understand
exactly.
as to why.
No, that's the whole problem. Nobody wants to understand. If anyone was truly serious about this, we would have found solutions by now. We have the brightest minds in our country, but we refuse to employ them, and we refuse to find solutions to solve our problems.
We require practical, effective solutions.
We need to come to effective solutions as such. And for coming to effective solutions, we have to look into the whole thing in a holistic approach, in a holistic way. And we need to understand as to where we had gone wrong in the past.
I don't know what that means.
We need to understand that.
We have Ankush Bhatia on the phone line from Pune. Ankush Bhatia, go ahead. Ankush Bhatia, go ahead. All right, our phone lines are still open for viewers who want to come in, but Vaibhav Agarwal and Mohammad Khan, I'm coming to you on this, and I don't want a comparison between this government and that government. We are, let's be honest, in a job crisis. We don't have time for bickering. Where is the solution, and why don't we have it yet, Vaibhav Agarwal?
Well, Vaibhav, I
can't read what's on your page, Vaibhav Agarwal. You'll have to read it out first.
So I would say this, Vaibhav. Look, it's a matter of fact that
I don't want to.
Recruitment has fallen across the IITs, the IIMs. Wipro, Infosys put out their recruitment figures, and they have come down. Again, this is all available. This is a very big problem right now because if you
I'll tell you, Mohammed Bhai, let's be honest about this debate for a change. For a change, Mohammed Bhai, let's be honest about this. Let's not do a slugfest on numbers, because it is because you also will agree, my learned counsel.
My point is about political will. My point is not, I'm not going to get into BJP, Congress, numbers. I will simply say this. If you wanted to, you have the power in parliament. You have vast resources of the government at your disposal. You have some of the best minds at your disposal. My only argument is that it seems you have spent the last 4 years prioritizing politics over governance. And that is what we are witnessing. That is what the data points. Now, you may have data, I may have data, but I would also like to point out that we take it right as the conservative estimate.
So, Mohammed bhai, let me, I'll share this with you.
All right. Vaibhav, last word. Vaibhav Agarwal, go ahead.
Yeah. So I'll share this with you, Faye, and the entire panel. And you know what? See, the idea is that for the time being, the government sector is in our control, for example. So our policies around the government PSUs, as the economist on the panel also said, and Shubho also pointed out, that at least the government can control it. Yes, we can't control the private sector. And then there is a rural-urban divide and so on and so forth. You know, so the number crunching is definitely not going straightforward. Now, when we look at the will of the government, we are creating an ecosystem and we are pushing it hard. So for example, we've already created an internal target for us. Of course, the minister did not share with you, and we are doing very well. Internally, we decided that we should cross about 7%. And I am going on record to say that we are already almost near 7.2% in government hiring. With respect to the last term,
you did that without informing your Labour Minister?
That's what exactly I said.
No, hang on. Vaibhav Agarwal, I won't allow you to do this. You cannot say the minister didn't inform me. This was a question in Parliament. I'm holding out the official answer in Parliament. So you are telling me that you have an internal target that either your Labour Minister is not informed of, which is a serious problem, or has not informed Parliament of, which is an even more serious problem. Which of the two is it?
No. That's exactly not what I'm saying. That's exactly not what I'm saying.
Then what are you saying? Where is this internal target coming from if the Labour Minister has told Parliament that there is no internal target?
The government, absolutely, there are no targets. The government had a survey, and basis which we thought that we should go on 7.2%, and the survey on the 7.2% is public information. And that data is available across, even if you Google that. So that is not a big deal. You want me to show you that data? I can show you that data right now. I mean, that data is just sitting there, you know. So that data is, so all I'm saying is that the government jobs, when you say, and that is an incomplete data, but you know, I can request the cameraman to just zoom in and just take a look at this, and you'll be able to see as to what this is really. And this is financial year 17-18, which we haven't even yet closed. So, you know, at the end of the day, we are having an intention. And the point is, we are having an intention, and that is what is needed. We need to create an ecosystem. You know, India has 8, 10, 15 zones.
Okay. Vaibhav, unfortunately, I've run out of time. I have to wrap up this conversation. I've run out of time. 1 second. I have to wrap up this conversation. It all boils down simply to this. While I thank my panelists for joining us this evening, it boils down to the fact that we are, in fact, in a job crisis. And in a response to Parliament, the Minister of Labour and Employment in Lok Sabha has submitted a written answer to a question saying there is no internal target, or the government has not even set a target on employment creation or reducing unemployment. He has said that this is top priority. I still don't understand how a project or a particular cause can be top priority when you haven't even gotten around to setting a target. No target has been set by the government. However, employment generation and improving employability is priority concern for the government. And in this data, it is accepted that not only has the number of jobs being created by the Prime Minister EPGM, or what is called Employment Generation Program, fallen by half in the last 1 year. Government data also shows a slowdown in placements of persons who have received skills training, according to the Times of India. This is not about politics. Remember that every unemployed person is either a qualified graduate or someone who has spent money and energy, and in a lot of cases in our country, mortgaged their homes and their savings to get an education and is currently without a job. Or somebody in their 30s or their 40s who have lives to support, children, families, home loan EMIs to pay, who have now been removed from their job. We also understand that there are several engineering students who received college placements and were put on hold but were never actually recruited. What do we want these people to now do? In the very least, there should be a larger sense of seriousness from the Labour Ministry, who needs to now set a target and treat this with more seriousness. The people on our panel offered us solutions. Why isn't the Labour Ministry seeking stronger advice and coming up with a better plan? The answer that was provided to Parliament was wishy-washy because there is no clear plan and we are running out of time. We cannot have these many people unemployed in a country that's growing as fast as us. Remember, we're constantly bragging about being the youngest country in the world. We're 60% of our population being in their 20s and their 30s. If we don't employ them, we're not only wasting a massive opportunity to be a world superpower, we're creating massive, massive problems. We don't have time for politics. We have to solve the problem before it gets worse. Thanks for watching.